Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here live in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I would like to say hello and welcome to rock musician Joe Molland. He's had a career in music spanning 5 decades. He's played with many legendary musicians, and you might know and recognize him from the group Badfinger. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, Molly. It's nice to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So you were in the rock group Badfinger, and again, you've played with many legendary musicians, including John Lennon and George Harrison. You actually have the 45th anniversary of the album Straight Up coming up, and you have 2 concerts in New England coming soon, where you're going to be playing Straight Up in its entirety. Tell me a little bit about what prompted you to have these concerts.
Well, we had a producer, Keith Putney, show producer, he thought it might be a good idea. You know, we saw, I saw the Zombies, actually, in Minneapolis here, where I live. I went and saw them at the depot. Actually, it's called First Avenue now. It's called the depot when I first came here. But anyway, so I saw them do it, and I've heard about a couple of other bands doing this kind of thing. And then Keith called me one day, again Keith called me, and told me he'd be interested in, putting a tour together for me, involving doing the Straight Up album. Straight Up album was our most popular record, really, and over the years it's gone on to, it sold a few million copies when it came out, and it keeps on selling, and they keep on using the songs in different TV things, like Breaking Bad used Baby Blue, and Martin Scorsese used Baby Blue as well, but, they use the songs in a lot of things, so we're still rocking along, and I'm getting dings on my computer.
That's okay. People are like, hey, I see you on Go Local. That's so, and what's that like for you? Because it's true, your music keeps coming up in pop culture. Like you said, Baby Blue was used in Breaking Bad in the finale, and Martin Scorsese is using your music. So even though this music is decades old, it's still relevant and popular today. What is that like for you?
It's great. I'm very fortunate. We're very fortunate, really. And I really still don't know what it is. I know the songs are good songs. They were the best, we could do, and we did our best recording them and stuff. Made the best record we could. So I don't really know, but it's just amazing how people still really enjoy the songs, really enjoy the the Badfinger sound, and even young bands come and they write about the sound of the guitars on Badfinger records and stuff like that. At the time, of course, we were just plugging in and turning them up. You know what I mean? So it was great. I've been very, very lucky. I don't know anybody luckier than me. It's been fantastic.
It has been a very blessed career, I would say. You've played with some legendary musicians. You worked alongside George Harrison. He produced he produced a handful of songs on the Straight Up album. What was it like to work with him? Producing some of these songs, and then you also played guitar with him as well. What was that like for you as an artist?
George was a really nice guy to work with. Very humble. Not a rock star in the traditional sense. I never saw him with a pair of spandex pants on or anything like that. He didn't travel around with an entourage of people, just kind of by himself. A very kind of a regular guy. He was always smart and to the point, George, and I've heard this about him from people that were with him all the time, that he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. And that's what he was like with us in the studio. He encouraged us. He brought his own guitar and, plugged himself in and just played along with us. And he would ask if it was okay if he played guitar with us. You would think like a guy like that would just come in and assume it would be okay. But he would ask if it was all right to play a bit of guitar here, or do this. And full of ideas, of course. All his years of studying records and rock and roll music, a great rock and roll music fan, incidentally. So all those years of studying, he brought that all with him every day. and wasn't afraid to share it, wasn't selfish with it. If he had an idea for the guitar line, he'd come right up and play it for you. And you were, you know, he left, obviously, you were free to say, well, I don't really like that too much, you know, it's not really what it was about. But, you know, usually it was a really good idea, and we wanted him to do it, like, and he wasn't afraid to just sit down and play a bit of rhythm with you. You know, while you played lead guitar, you know, he wasn't always showing up or nothing. So that's what he was like to work with, very cooperative, helped with the songs, came up with some lines in tunes, arranged them to where he thought they would be radio friendly, which is really important for a record, I suppose. He was great to work with, he was really good. And playing on his record, you know, he was very straightforward again. He would come in the studio and tell us about, you know, the songs. First of all, he'd sit down with you and play you the song, and so he expected you to learn the chords while he was playing it, you know. And it was just a really fantastic experience for me. I was 23 when I first recorded with him. And he was in the biggest band in the world, you know, and they'd just done like Abbey Road or something like that, you know. You know, the music that this guy was part of was incredible and a big part of my life, so it was a big thrill to be with him. But, you know, again, he was so nice and so humble. He played the song, and you know, he'd advise us to play things like play the acoustic part straight. Don't be going jigga jing jing jigga 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 jing, you know, because all of a sudden you've got 4 acoustics all going jigga 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 jigga, you know, like that. So play the part straight, and there's a lot of that in their records. You can hear them where they're just playing the part. There's no screwing around, you know what I mean? And so he brought all that experience to us, and we really learned a lot from him. Just a great experience all around for me.
I mean, that must have been an incredible opportunity. The band Badfinger was signed under Apple, under the label Apple,
Yep.
which was the Beatles record label. So that must just have been an incredible opportunity. And to think that you were so young, just 23 years old, and be able to have that learning opportunity with, like you said, the biggest band in the world.
You know, the Iveys, which is what Badfinger was called at the time they signed, and were playing all around Wales and around England, doing shows of their own, doing the London clubs, the Marquee and all those places, and going down really well and getting to be rated as a band. Bill Collins, the manager of the band, the personal manager, was advising them to write songs, start writing songs, because they were a rock band, you know. And so they did. They started writing songs and stuff, and it was those little cassettes of tunes that he kept giving to Paul McCartney. There's a story there. Our manager, Bill Collins, was a jazz pianist in Liverpool during the war, Second World War. And during that time, he met Paul McCartney's dad, who was a trumpeter. I think it was a trumpeter. And they knew each other vaguely, you know what I mean? They weren't like bosom buddies or nothing. But Bill used that little contact to get in to see the Beatles and give them cassettes of the Iveys, you know, songs and stuff. And I believe it was 3 cassettes later that the Beatles decided to sign the Iveys to Apple Publishing, which was the songwriting half of Apple. And then when they formed the record label, they signed the band to Apple Records, made an album under the name The Iveys, an album called Maybe Tomorrow. Now, I wasn't in the Iveys, but they made an album. It came out, it wasn't ultra successful or anything, and the band started to have a bit of interior troubles, and ended up really with the bass player leaving, and they decided to change their sound. They wanted to be a bit more rocky. They'd gotten into a real pop vein, you know. You can hear that on the Iveys record, and they wanted to get back to a bit more rock and roll. So Tommy Evans, the bass player, the guitar player from Liverpool, he decided he was going to switch to bass, and they started looking for a guitar player. And I was like the 25th or 26th guy that came along and auditioned for the band. I got recommended for the job, and there are stories behind that too, but it takes too long. We'll be on all day if I tell all. You know what I mean?
We don't have enough time for that one.
Yeah, right, so I got the job, and then come and get it. You know, Paul wrote "Come and Get It" and gave it to the band and produced it and stuff, and that came out. And that was the band's first big hit. You know, and Badfinger was off and running then. Once we had one hit, you know,
You were
then we had
off and running, and I have to say I've had that in my head for the past 2 weeks. My husband and I were rocking out to that last night, getting ready for this interview. And many hits to your name. Badfinger, people know the history of the band. Took off in many directions, and so quite a bit of history to the band itself, and so interested to get some insight from you just on kind of how the band had formed and some backstory to that. We talked about working with George Harrison, and that was fascinating just to hear a little bit about that. You also worked with John Lennon on his album Imagine. Talk to me about that experience.
Yeah, we played on a couple of songs with John for the Imagine album. They called us one day. We had a little band house in London, and Tommy and I were hanging around, just knocking about. Tommy, the bass player, Tommy Evans, and the phone rings, and it's John's driver, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Well, we're not really doing anything, just hanging at the house." So he said, "Well, look, John's recording tonight, and I'd like you to do a favour, grab your guitars and come on down and play some guitar for him. He's doing a new record." And so they sent a car for us, and Tommy and I rode down there. We were very excited, going to Johnny's house. John was unbelievable, wasn't he? John Lennon, come on, And so we went down to his mansion, and we couldn't find anybody. It's such a big house. And we're walking down hallways and, snooker rooms and lounges and just fantastic. Black carpet everywhere was a big impression to me, because I've never seen black carpet, and there were things like that about his house. There's artworks were big gold frames hanging on the walls with like a hammer in it, or a shovel, or a pitchfork. They were the things that I guess he looked on as art, the works of art, So, anyway, things like that. Big jukebox in the kitchen with all the rock and roll records, 20 Flight Rock and Girl Can't Help It and all that stuff. Just great. And then we bumped into Mike Pender from the Moody Blues. He was going to play piano on the session, and Nicky Hopkins was there. We met Nicky, of course, he's a good friend. Klaus Vorman was there. Jim Keltner playing drums. And then John came in. George Harrison was there as well, actually, and Phil Spector. And about 10 o'clock at night, John and Yoko came in, and they were really nice. Again, they were really pretty normal. Yoko was really sweet. We were all a bit worried because we'd heard these weird things about her, but she wasn't like that at all. She was really nice. Do you want a Coca-Cola? Would you like me to run and get some cigarettes for you? I mean, that's what she was like. I'm not kidding. So we were like, wow, she's nice, And John, of course, he was brusque. He spoke in a very kind of a broad Liverpool accent, you know what I mean, like this, and he wasn't afraid to say F this or, do that, whatever. And he just had a few words with us, and then he said the first song we're going to do is Jealous Guy, a song called Jealous Guy, a new song, and it goes like this. And he just sat there and played it to us.
Wow. And
that's a bit of a dream right there. John sitting on his little stool with his headphones on and just singing Jealous Guy, if you can imagine that. And we're all sitting there just gaga, He was great, trying to find the chord and watching him like crazy. Because it was the same as George. They expected you to learn the chords while they were playing the song. They never had sheet music around or nothing like that. They never had chord sheets for you. You had to learn the song and do it. And we did it. It was great. We did a couple of takes, 2 or 3 takes, and that was that. It was good. And then he said, he told us that if we wanted, we could split now, because the next song they were going to do was it wasn't really an acoustic song, and we were playing acoustics for him. But play along if we wanted. So we chose to stay, and he played this kind of Bo Diddley kind of riff, big strummy, open string rhythm, acoustic guitar sound. It sounded great, and of course we were all familiar with the style, and so we just played right along with him. And there were a couple of twisty, turny kind of changes in it, but we played it once or twice through, and we had it, and then we jammed our way through the song, and he recorded it. And don't you know that that's the song he gave us credit for?
Oh.
Miss Jealous Guy. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a soldier. It was called. That's what he gave us credit for, not Jealous Guy.
Not the one you worked on.
Yeah. And so I don't know, it worked out good. And yes, you're right. We had it was great getting the Imagine album and looking on it, and having a listen. And there were our pictures on it. You know what I mean? And special thanks and all that stuff. It was really, really a super thing, and one of the great nights of my life, really. It ranks right up there with anything I've done. That playing with John Lennon's just extraordinary,
My goodness. Well, and you have been and you've created music history along the way. So it's so interesting to get to your take and to hear these stories. So we're really appreciative of that. And just kind of as we wrap up here, let's talk a little bit about you released a solo album, Return to Memphis, in 2014, and you're currently working on a new album, recording in LA. Talk to us a little bit about this new album and what fans can expect.
It'll be much more in the tradition that I'm known for, really, which is kind of like the English kind of pop rock sound, power pop kind of thing. I'm hoping that we can get it done in the next 6 months. And we want to do it with Mark. I can't remember his bloody name now. Mark Hudson. Believe it or not, is a great friend of mine. We've already done a couple of songs, and they sound incredible to me. So I'm really excited about it. I've got the songs, I believe. Mark's got all the demos right now. He's making up his mind, I think, which ones to throw away and which ones to maybe fiddle with and make a record out of. It's a great, I'm just looking forward to doing it. I went to Memphis to do the other one, to do a Memphis sounding record. I grew up listening to Sam and Dave and Al Green and all those guys on the Memphis music, Elvis included. And so when I wanted to make a different record, I've been producing my records, and they all kind of sound the same because that's what I do. Difficult to do something different, when you do it yourself. So I decided to go to Memphis and make a record, and that's what that Return to Memphis is. It sounds completely different to my other records, but I'm really looking forward to this. Mark Hudson, I think he might make me a hit record, and I'll love him for the rest of my life.
I think you are going to make yourself a hit record. I think you have it in you.
Well, thank you very much. I need the encouragement, so encourage away. I've got to mention that we're doing this tour. My phone's going to keep ringing, but I'm doing this tour now with the Straight Up album, and it's just something that's really a lot of fun. The band out of LA, I call them the Cohorts, but that's not their real name, of course. Young band, we're selling out everywhere, so go out and get your tickets. I'm not surprised as anybody to hear that, but we are selling everywhere out. It's really incredible. And I'm having the time of my life. I can't believe it, really. I'm also in the middle. I've just sold my house, and I'm in the middle of moving out. So if you could see behind me, you'd see this absolute wreck of a place.
Oh, well, I think it looks good from our end. And that's great. So you have 2 New England shows, November 3rd in Arlington, Mass., and then November 9th, you're coming to Rhode Island, playing at the Greenwich Odeon, which is an amazing venue. And you're playing the Straight Up album in its entirety. So we're really excited to have you come to our neck of the woods. And hopefully your moving process will be somewhat close to finish by now. So, Joe Molland, thank you so much for talking with us today. We really appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure hearing all about your musical career. And it's continuing on. So hang tight with us. We really appreciate your time.
All right, Molly. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Everyone, hang tight with us as we wrap up here on Go Local.